I guess you could start by saying, hey, it's July 16th, 2022. We're here to record a podcast. It's Jeff, it's John. We have long conversations, and we've recorded podcasts in the past about specific games, but we always thought, let's record a podcast about our conversations so we can memorialize them, we have them, and hey, someone else out there may like it.
At least that's the hope. At least I'm hoping that there'll be people out there. They're like, oh man, these people they understand and they enjoy talking about games, and I enjoy listening to them. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is more just to memorialize it
yeah,
so
yeah.
I can go back and look, or family can go back and look.
For the most part, like you and I, we've always had hours and hours of conversations about anything and everything gaming. Um, and as you said, we've done podcasts in the past, dealing with like I think what Final Fantasy 15 was one of them that we did, and I think there was one for Fire Emblem.
Yeah, Fire Emblem Sacred Stones, we did a kind of playthrough
Phew.
podcast, and then same thing with Final Fantasy 15.
So, and I since we have these conversations that do go and we really do a lot of deep dives into a lot of the stuff. And there's just such a web of connections between the original topic and everything else that goes around it. Uh, I thought it would be fun to start doing it. Hopefully, a fairly regular podcast on things.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing.
Um,
If we're gonna do this, if we're gonna take it seriously, we need to have a schedule where we do it like once a week. I
yeah,
I'd prefer it to be in person just because I think we have better
yeah,
conversations when we're bouncing stuff off each other. But if we
yeah,
have to, doing remote like this is fine too.
yeah. Um, so just kind of getting into something that I'm really, really wanting to get your thoughts. I finally, after months and months of playing Elden Ring, I have finally put the game largely to rest, beat the Elden Beast, got all of the trophies. Um, I think my final timestamp, at least for now, is sitting at like 172 hours.
Yeah,
Um,
let's see. Do you know what level you were?
when I finished, I was at I think 180. I believe 180 or 182. I think is where I was at when I finally beat the game.
Yeah, so
Um,
I was level 186 and my time was 161 hours 24 minutes. And it was the same thing for me where, I got all the achievements, all the trophies, basically just did one playthrough. I think when did the game come out? February or early March?
uh, I I think it was like late February. If unfortunately for Horizon, the Breath of the Wild event happened again, where there was a lot of talk about Horizon Forbidden West being
Yeah,
a Game of the Year contender, and then like a week or two later, Elden Ring came out and completely took over all of that conversation.
right. Yeah, so we
Um,
got Elden Ring maybe like a month or 3 weeks after it came out. Um, And same thing for me. I've been playing it up until like last week, whenever I finally completed. We each had that one playthrough. We got all the achievements, all the trophies.
yeah,
And of course, our playthroughs are like 100+ hours. So, I mean, we milked it. We got everything, we
yeah.
saw everything we needed to see in one playthrough.
Well, and one thing that uh, Corey uh, mentioned is, you, myself, and him probably didn't play the game the way that the developers were necessarily intending for us to play the game. Um, all three of us really went the like completionist route on our very first playthrough, trying to do everything in that first playthrough.
Yeah, and I would
Um,
say, not necessarily completionist, but
well,
completionist
yeah,
insofar as trophies or achievements were concerned.
yeah, because
Because yeah, I mean,
there's still
there's tons of stuff I didn't see, and you
yeah,
know, multiple classes. I only played one class. I could go back and
Yeah,
play like 8
yeah,
different classes too.
and that's I and I mean for the most part, like when I was getting all three endings, there's apparently plenty of endings that I didn't complete enough side quests with certain characters to be able to get all
Ye
of the endings.
yes, yeah, for that neutral ending, I think there's maybe 5. I think whenever I
Yeah,
tried it, I had the option for 2 or 3. I know I completed Fia Deathbed Companion's quest line, so that was one of the
yeah,
options.
yeah. I did that, and then so essentially the endings that I had access to was the obviously the Frenzied Flame, um, and then Ronnie's quest, her quest line, the Age of the Stars. And then as far as like the neutral ones, I had Fia's, and then I had, I think it was like Mending the Ring.
Yeah, which I think that's just the neutral generic ending.
Okay,
Like, hey, you became
so
Elden Lord. Congrats.
yeah, it's like you did the at least the requirements to get to the end. Um, so yeah, I had all totaled four possible endings. Of course, having to go through to clean myself of the frenzied flame, having to go through that Melania fight to get the Miquella's needle was a pain for me. Um, and whereas for you, it wasn't as much of a pain to beat Melania.
Yeah, I think I got her on my
Um,
5th attempt.
um, but probably potentially more frustrating for me was the Dragon Lord fight. Um,
Dragon Lord, like
uh,
Placiduous Axe.
yeah. Um,
Yeah,
what?
that one's pretty annoying for me as a melee combatant.
Yeah, because you really have to hug that fight, especially when he starts shooting laser beams around, and for for since I played, I think it was Confessor or Prophet or whatever the technical term is for the incantation focused class. For me, even though I was in like level 170, 180, I was still getting one-shotted by so many things. So dealing with Melania and dealing with the Dragon Lord, the Placidusax, I don't know how to pronounce that name.
Yeah, Dragon Lord
Um,
Lake Placid.
yeah, um, those fights, like I basically played the game using Bloodhound Step pretty much religiously. Like that was the Ash of War that I always had equipped because it allowed me to either get out of dodge much quicker than a normal roll would, but also gives me additional like invincibility frames to be able to not get hit by something. So for the most part, like I always had that, but I was with the Dragon Lord fight. I was consistently just too far away from the Dragon Lord to be able to avoid those stupid laser beams that would just one shot me. Um, and since they were fairly unpredictable, it was tough to gauge when to successfully pull off a Bloodhound Step ability. Um, And the more frustrating thing about the Dragon Lord fight is that it wasn't like a grace point was nearby.
Yeah,
Having
that's
to
the thing I hated so much was having it.
like
It was within a minute. You
yeah,
could get to it in a minute, but you had to do a little bit of platforming. There was a lot of birds, and as is the case with the Elden Ring enemies, it seems like the natural enemies, the natural animals, are sometimes the most annoying. Birds among them.
yeah, and plus dealing with those the path that I took um, was the Grace Point, the one that was like beside the bridge or something, the beside the Great Bridge, I think is what the Grace Point's name was. So like having to go down a lift, and then once I got down the
Oh,
lift, I then had to run past like three or four different like demi-human type or beasts or whatever, and two of them were able to shoot the like red lightning. Um, so that was probably the more frustrating part about that fight was the whenever I would die, I would then have to spend about a minute to run through this little obstacle course to get back to the dragon.
so you took a different
And
path than I did. I was using the Grace Point that um, was on a roof right after you fight one of those knights. I forget what the knights were called, but I fell down on the roof.
Crucible.
Crucible Knight, yeah. There was a after you beat a Crucible Knight, you find a site of grace up on the roof. I basically took that path and then went around. I think basically what you did instead of taking the
Okay.
lift where you did, I kind of came at it where the way you first came to that lift. So I was basically going
Okay.
around, and so that's why I was having to deal with the birds.
Okay. Well, either way, there wasn't a quick, getting right back into that fight.
Yeah.
So, for me,
And so beside the Great Bridge, that side of Grace, that's where the horseback rider was in front of
yeah,
Malekith. Did that
yeah.
how did that fight go for you?
I so I didn't really have that much of an issue with Malekith. I think
Well, not
all
Malekith,
told,
the horseback rider in front of him.
oh, the horseback. Oh, just screw that one. Like that stupid. Like the, I ended up having to just cheese him because like it didn't matter what I did. Like if I, it's like he knew exactly where I was going to be, and I would always get hit by those stupid lightning strikes. Um, for the most part, I was able to dodge the fireballs from the horse, but the lightning strikes were the bigger problem for me because it, I just could not get that timing down.
Yeah,
Which
it took me like a dozen or so attempts, and it kind of highlights, one of the gratifying things about the gameplay is, I was beating my head up against the wall trying to beat the guy and trying to just pin down the pattern, trying to figure it all out. But then whenever I got the pattern figured out, and then I get close and I get a little closer the next time, and then whenever I finally execute and actually get him, after dodging attacks and hitting him at the right time, it's just so euphoric. It's like, wow, I overcame that. That was a
yeah.
challenge.
Um, and then as is kind of the case with some of the bosses that I came across, like some of the bosses largely or in most respect would uh, live up to the conversation around them. Like for me, Melania was a tough boss to beat. But then I had no issues with like the fire giant. Um, Malekith really didn't pose much of a problem for me.
Yeah,
Um,
Malekith for me, that was another one where it took me like a dozen or so attempts to kind of pin him down, nail his actions, and then
yeah.
actually execute.
Um, and then the one fight that I had issue with was Horalu. Um,
Oh yeah,
the, the first part of the fight was not bad. The first part of the fight against oh, now I'm drawing a blank on the first
God
half name.
Godfrey,
Um,
Godfrey, the
yeah,
original
Godfrey.
Elden Lord.
Yeah, so like the first half really didn't have any issues, but then after the transformation and he became Horalu, and then just was like this Roman Greco wrestling oiled up dude just running around just grabbing and doing these insane like grabbing me in midair and slamming me down and killing me. Um, like that transition to Horalu was the part that I had the most issue with, but even then, um, I think it took me maybe 10 or so tries and got past that.
Yeah, he didn't
Um,
pose much of a challenge for me, but I feel like both of us are probably like very over leveled for what maybe the recommended level is at this point. I think the
Yeah,
recommended level is probably like 120 or 130 or something. So we're like
yeah,
50, 60 levels over that. But
yeah.
because I I put all my strength, all my stat growth into like strength or dexterity or intelligence, which for me as a melee person just meant I deal more damage. I just wanted
Yeah,
to see my attack stat as high as it could be, and then using blood loss weapons, kind of enemies like Horalu, weren't too bad. Like the ones who are susceptible to blood loss and just susceptible to normal katanas is what I was using. Anything that was
yeah.
susceptible to those weapons, I could just take down quick. And so,
And
and so for the follow-up fight against America, that was kind of how it was for that. America did not challenge me too much until we got to the Elden Beast, and
yeah,
I think it was only like 4 or 5 attempts, kind of like with Millennia, for me to beat the Elden Beast. But it was an annoying 4 or 5 just because the size of the battlefield. It would just
yeah,
take me so long to get over there and actually deal damage. And then same for the Ash of War I was using. Late game, I started using the Magic Tier, and the Magic Tier is just a duplicate of me, so he's stuck to the ground, running, two-stepping over to the boss just like I am.
yeah. And that's kind of in similar to like the Dragon Lord fight when dealing with Radagon, and then obviously the Elden Beast that comes after the fight with Radagon, which I don't know if we needed to put like a spoilers thing at the beginning of our conversation,
Well, I mean,
but
you started the conversation about Elden Ring talking about the Elden Beast,
yeah, so
so probably should
you
have
know,
done that like 18 minutes ago.
yeah, so for anybody out there, that's paying attention or listening, oops, spoilers,
Well,
um,
and hey,
but
it's like 4 or 5 months after the game came out.
and I mean, I think the game sold 12 million copies in its first month, so I think there's a pretty good amount of people that have already uh, at least played a little bit of Elden Ring to know about the Elden Beast, or at least Radagon and all that stuff. But like one thing that kind of with like the Dragon Lord fight um, with Radagon, I did not have really any issues with Radagon himself. It was the Elden Beast after. And the thing with uh, being squishy and really one, maybe two hits kills my character. Um, the biggest obstacle that I had was not being able to really have enough time to figure out any patterns or what the wind up or build up of things would be. So while Radagon really wasn't an issue, the Elden Beast and those stupid rings that it would create, and not really knowing how to avoid those, and it just kind of being like one, two, and then three, um, was kind of the really frustrating thing. The stabbing of the sword, the flying through the air, and like the Elden stars and stuff that the Elden Beast used, those weren't really that problematic. It was really just the um, just targeting the Elden Beast, and then he would jump into would jump into the sky or wherever we were at, and then so the camera pans up, and having to stop targeting, remember to stop targeting because the rings were going to start forming around me on the ground, uh, was just kind of one of those mechanics, and really. Like the last couple of bosses were the first bosses that I really had to start thinking about the various affinities in the game, like changing up my equipment or my spells or whatever I was doing to accommodate the fact that okay, well now I'm dealing with an enemy that's going to be hitting me with holy damage, or this enemy is going to be dealing fire damage, or um, and so it really wasn't until like the Dragon Lord and Radagon and the Elden Beast and even with Marika, with the Scarlet Rot stuff, like for me having to like
Millennia.
actually make changes um, with
Yeah,
like
it was the same for me. Like late game, actually having to start to remove talismans and, like you said, kind of line up with what would be most beneficial in this boss fight or that boss fight.
yeah.
and it is. I remarked about this last week when we talked about it, because we were both last week we had both reached Millennia and beaten her, and so we had the lengthy
Yeah.
conversation last week about it. But
Yeah,
it
and
was
you were
it's
just like, yeah, I just brushed her off.
yeah, which again, hearing you talk about it this time, it just highlights the point like how different our playthroughs were. Like you talked
Yeah.
about being so squishy and not really having a chance to learn their patterns or whatnot. Whereas I'm talking about with like Malekith, like, oh yeah, I just keep trying and like learn their patterns, whatnot. Like I have,
Yeah.
in addition to like my strength, is just a lot of defensive power and heavy armor, and on top of that, I think 11 healing flasks, which for you it's reversed. You have all your
Yeah.
flasks catered towards your magic. So I mean,
Yeah.
I had the luxury of just being able to like really study the patterns, figure out what I needed to do because I needed to get up close and stay close often.
Yeah. Um, and of course, one fight that I knew was coming up, and I was dreading the fight, and uh, getting to Farah Missoula, knowing that I was on the verge, like somewhere in this area, that I was gonna have to deal with the Godskin duo. Um, for for most of my exploration, knowing that they were somewhere around the corner, and then I got to like that chapel area, and like I didn't go into the actual chapel area. I explored all the way around it because I was like I have a feeling that this is where these assholes are gonna be at. These
Yeah,
two, um, and sure enough, like it was really cool that you can go into that fight from different angles or just like different doors and stuff, because kind of like the different paths that we took to get to the Dragon Lord in Farum Azula. Um, the like when I walked in and like I saw that health bar appear, I was like, oh no, here they are, and summoned Tish, but of course I was not prepared. Even though I thought I was prepared, I was not prepared, and they made quick work of me the first time, um, but really I think it took me 3 or 4 times to finally beat them. Um, because essentially, like I would summon Tish, and then it was just kind of like a divide and conquer type thing. I would deal with the Apostle, which I think the Apostle is the skinnier one that like stretches out. Um, like I would deal with him, get rid of him, and then it was just like a 2-on-1 with the Marshmallow Man one, um, which the frustrating thing about him, and everybody who's played Elden Ring knows that the fact that he like becomes this rolling monstrosity that doesn't stop until he hits something. Um, like once I was able to like get that timing down to get rid of the apostle, and then I could just focus on him. Once it became that like 2-on-1 fight, I really didn't have much of an issue with the Godskin duo, um, which I was so happy when I like on the third or fourth time of fighting them and I beat them. I was like, okay, I didn't have to spend as much time dying to these guys as I thought I was going to.
yeah.
But
So with Elden Ring done, it's on the shelf. Uh,
yeah,
you gonna return to it, doing more playthroughs, or since there's no more
um,
achievements, trophies, you're done?
well, I I really think that I have shelved it. I'm now diving into Miles Morales. I've played about an hour and a half of that, and streamed that on Twitch a little about a day or two ago. Um, but I did enjoy a little bit of the post game. I got the Sacred Relic Sword, which has the Wave of Gold Ash of War attached to it. And since it's largely a faith-based weapon, um, I went back to one of the areas that I would farm before to just kind of build up my levels and stuff. And I just really enjoyed using that Ash of War, and I put it up on YouTube. It's just like a 30, maybe 40-second clip. Um, just a really satisfying thing using that Ash of War and just watching enemies get mowed down within seconds was just like I was like, I have finally gotten to the mountaintop. I have finally gotten to being one of the most powerful beings in this game. Um, because
Uh-oh, there's a wolf.
yeah, that's so for the most part, like I think I am done, but I did enjoy a little bit of the post game stuff, just running around Mogwin's place. Just I just basically walked through the entire thing, just firing off the wave of gold
Now, is
and
that the
just
official
mowing
name?
down. Uh,
Mogwin's Place?
the
Is that like a bar?
uh,
You can get some cold
it's
brewskis there?
I think it's like Mogwin's Dynasty or
Uh,
Palace or
Mogwin's
something.
Palace.
Yeah, Mogwin's Palace. So
Yo,
just
this is Mogwin's place.
yeah.
Hey, this is
Um,
that Fair Missoula, the place tornadoes in the sky.
well, with Mogwin's place, they probably have a lot of Bloody Marys everywhere. This probably be the number one seller. Um, but
So
yeah,
then
I
you've
just
you've moved on to Miles Morales.
yeah. And that was kind of one thing. Like after I beat Spider-Man Remastered, I was like, okay, I've put about 30 hours into it. I'm ready for something new, something different, and I had picked up a couple games along the way, like Pokemon Legends Arceus and uh, Triangle Strategy, and which are games that I need to go back to and finish those as well. But nothing was quite sticking, and then Corey had been talking about how we could get Elden Ring. We could I'd be okay with, getting Elden Ring, and just kind of about a week or two of listening to that, and I was like, okay, well, Elden Ring is not quite my type of game. I don't really enjoy Soulsborne type games, but sure, we can give it a shot. Well, everybody's talking about it. The hype is through the roof. Um, I was like, this will probably just be another like little spend a couple hours playing it, then I'll end up picking up Miles Morales or something. Because I wanted to break from Spider-Man Remastered. I didn't want to just dive right into another Spider-Man game. Um, but I did not foresee spending almost 180 hours in Elden Ring.
Yeah, it
Um,
basically
so
takes up months of your game playing time.
yeah, so after finishing Elden Ring, I was like, oh yeah, Miles Morales. I forgot that I had intended to get into that game eventually. I just didn't think it was going to be 5 months down the road.
Do you have any
Um,
other games on your short list for what you'll be playing next? You got Miles Morales. Anything else in the hopper? Anything you're playing as alongside Miles Morales?
I'm probably going to pick up streaming the Eowyn Chronicle Rising again.
Oh
The
yeah, you
big
need to beat that.
the big reason that I didn't finish with that one was I was streaming my walkthrough or my playthrough of it, and I was doing voices and stuff, and I spent about a month of having vocal issues with a cough and all kinds of crap that was really tedious and just not cooperating when wanting to do different voices for different characters. And I really didn't want to be like coughing in the mic as well. I don't think that would really be a good um, entertaining part of it. So
So are you gonna
the
pick up streaming that, or are you just gonna play it solo? Play it offline?
uh, I'll probably go ahead and get back into streaming it. That
Alright.
way I can have like a full uh, video catalog of all the quote unquote episodes, um, to probably do more video content with that. Um, and of course, you know, just with the stuff that you and I are playing, obviously we're playing Halo as well. So there's the
Yeah,
first Halo, the original, the OG Halo,
yeah. Two
which
chapters left. Should beat
um,
that next time we play it.
yeah, um, which
See, are you wanting? I think you want to go into Gears of War after that, Halo 2, or something else. I know you talked about
um,
alternating Halo and Gears of War for our playthroughs.
I think that might be a fun thing to do is to jump back and forth between Halo and Gears of War. I think they would be different enough of an experience that we wouldn't get, super
Yeah,
burned out.
right.
Um, Plus, both of those franchises have a couple of new games that we haven't touched yet. Um,
True. Yeah.
so, and another just great thing about it is that all of those games are on Game Pass. So
Yeah.
even if
Which,
there's something that we don't have, we can still play it.
yeah. I mean, I think in both of our cases we have Halo Master Chief Physical regardless, but
Yeah,
with our, relatively new Xboxes, we got them through the program that
all
gets you,
access.
yeah, Xbox All Access, gets you the Xbox Live Gold and Game Pass Ultimate, or I guess Xbox Live Gold comes with Game Pass Ultimate, but we got that for 2 years.
Yeah, um, and yeah, there's a couple. I don't know if we want to go the route of like doing like the Spartan Assault and the Halo Wars titles and that
I
kind of stuff, but
I don't know that those have co-op campaigns. Halo Wars games, they may, but those Spartan Assault games, I'm not familiar enough with them to know. At the very
yeah,
least, I'd say we just stick to the main ones.
yeah,
And then, if we're playing through all of the mainline entries in Halo and Gears of War, we'll be doing that for like 3 or 4 years. So, you know, it'll take us a while before we even have to decide if we want to touch the spin-offs.
yeah. It I did get Gears Tactics from Best Buy like
Yep, same. Yeah, I think we both got that deal
some
during Christmas or whenever. Black
like five
Friday.
dollars or something. Um, so yeah, that's both franchises. They have with Halo Wars and their strategy game. I haven't really looked into much about Gears Tactics, but I'm sure it's probably similar to that. But I think switching off between Halo and Gears of War, I think, like I said, I think those would be different enough experiences not to get burned out.
Right.
Um, Plus, probably checking out a little bit more of Back for Blood. Um,
Yeah,
I don't know.
we need to figure that out because I am going to start cleaning. I think I played another session without you. I think maybe after we beat it that one night, and I just went through and got another achievement or two. But
Mm,
I'm ready to start cleaning up achievements in that and like TMNT Shredder's Revenge. I think I've kind of realistically figured out which achievements I will get and which ones I won't.
yeah, that's one thing that you and I never really run into is, you know, we never have the problem of not really having games to play,
Hmm.
and Game Pass it just made it easier to make that backlog even bigger.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So after I beat Elden Ring, I finally hopped into Oscar's Wrath, uh,
oh,
which
finally
I have.
getting
I did beat that. Like it only took 3 sessions, 4 sessions to get the true ending.
so
But it's a
even all the
short.
DLC is done too.
Well, I just finished the DLC today, so
Oh, okay.
doing the run through of just like whatever came with the game normally. That was like right at 6 hours, 5.5 to 6 hours. And then I finished all the additional DLC items, and I think I replayed a stage or two to clean up an achievement. And my total right now is sitting at like 8 hours exactly.
So where does it sit as far as the games you've played this year? Like, um, as far as obviously, I think Elden Ring has that pretty much on lock for your game of the year, I think. But
Uh, yeah, let me
uh,
see. So
uh,
it'd definitely be top 10. Looking at my top 10 before adding that, and actually, yeah, Elden Ring's there. Yeah, so my top 10 before adding Oscar's Wrath, just because I hadn't added it at this point. And this is just going chronologically on when I played them this year. Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six Vegas, Shatter,
old school.
Suikoden 4, Pokemon Legends Arceus, Gran Turismo 6, Elden Ring, Eiyuden Chronicle Rising, Back for Blood, Oscar's Wrath. So Oscar's Wrath is on there actually. and TMNT Shredder's Revenge. But at least at this point, with like 5 months, 4.5 months left in the year, it'd be a top 10 contender. And I will
Yeah.
say, so it it's kind of annoying structure because it is a beat 'em up. It's an action beat 'em up, kind of evolution of the old school 2D beat 'em ups like Streets of Rage, Final Fight, and then of course the evolution of like DMC and Bayonetta, those sort of like third person character action games. But you don't really play it a lot. I swear, like some of the chapters, the game is broken up into like 18 episodes. Of course you saw it. It's very much like an anime, and
Yeah.
I think in some of those episodes, they can be like 15 to 30 minutes long. Some of my gameplay time totals were just like 3 minutes, 4 minutes. So like the
So,
actual like on the ground beating up people or like flying around in the sky doing like the rail shooter action, kind of like Panzer
yeah.
Dragoon or Rez, those sections are really not that long. Basically, you're just doing that long enough to fill up your burst meter, and you're filling that up by beating up on the people, doing special attacks on them. By the time that meter is full, you pull the trigger to activate burst, and then it basically proceeds to the next cutscene. In some of those cutscenes, there are the quick time events. Again, you saw that. It's very
Yeah.
QTE heavy, but that's that would turn some people off. I really loved it. It's basically an interactive anime, and
Yeah.
the DLC stuff that I finished today, the game's true ending, the final episode. Basically, you beat it once, and then it says, "Oh, that's kind of the ending. There is a true ending if you can complete some of these other tasks." And so even whenever you do that, it expands what happens at the end and kind of says, "Okay, here's what really happens." But at that point, then it leaves a cliffhanger ending. And so that's where the DLC comes in that has the actual ending. And I will say the DLC is over the top amazing. Like the final boss fight, that whole episode is like one of the greatest climaxes to a game I've played. It is fantastic.
Well, so it kind of seems like maybe they took a few pointers from Hideo Kojima on just you know not necessarily allowing the player to play a whole lot, but a little bit, not a whole lot.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean, I think it comes from probably their starting point. Like, I'd be
yeah,
interested to read interviews or whatnot on what they intended this game to be because it is like an interactive anime. So I mean, it seems like they started with that goal in mind first. So I mean, that goes in hand with not a
yeah.
lot of gameplay. Now, I will play it a couple more times. I will try and I feel like getting the platinum, getting all the achievements in this game will be not too difficult. It will require a couple more playthroughs, but I think those playthroughs will be much quicker. And again, the playthrough that would be required is just 5.5, 6 hours, so it's not a very long game, anyways. And it is
Yeah.
fun. Like, I kind of griped a little bit about like the lack of gameplay or how it doesn't really develop any, but it's worthwhile now. And you picked it up. Is this something you think you did pick it up, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Is this something you
Now,
think you'd play?
I mean, I'm definitely interested in playing it. I don't know if it's something that I would be picking up to actually play in the short term.
Well,
Um,
I would recommend it. Like I said, it's only like 5.5, 6 hours, 8 hours tops to do all the DLC stuff. And like I said, that final boss fight is fantastic. One of the coolest things in a game I've played lately, at least lately, if not ever.
so uh, outside of cleaning up, you know, achievements and stuff, um, what do you think is your next like focused, your main focus game? Like,
Let me see. So let me think about this. I am going to clean up achievements in Asura's Wrath. Um, I'll clean up achievements in Back for Blood, clean up achievements in TMNT. I have also been playing that Pac-Man Museum Plus game.
oh yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I've just about squeezed all I'm gonna get out of that. I think there's one game in there, Pack and Roll Remix, that I'll probably play to completion, and that'll be done in like a session. It'll be like 30, 45 minutes, I think. Again, at this point, I'm trying to just clean up some achievements. Just playing a lot of Pac-Man 256, which is just an awesome game generally. Have you ever played
Yeah.
Pac-Man 256?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
Yeah, I loved that game whenever it came out, and then kind of re-experiencing with it with this compilation. It's like, oh yeah, that game's pretty great.
yeah. Um,
So be doing that. I have been playing Forza Horizon 5 offhand. Now that I'm done with Elden Ring, I've just kind of been popping that in and doing a little bit of stuff here and there and that, which is kind of the same way I've been playing Gran Turismo 6. Basically, just play that whenever Jenny's using the TV, whenever I have to be seated somewhere else. Um, as far as games, I'll focus on next. With Elden Ring done, and with that having consumed so much time, I'll
just
play
a
a couple
little.
other couple more shorter games. I think you and I've discussed this before, where I basically structure my backlog like, okay, I'm gonna play an RPG. I'm gonna play a couple short games. I'm gonna play an RPG, couple short games.
Yeah.
So with Asura's Wrath off my backlog, I'll probably play a couple shoot 'em ups. Um, I did, but we checked out Vandal Hearts last week. I may jump into that because I think that's only like 10 or 15 hours long. So even that, though that is an RPG, that is a short RPG, something I can get into.
Yeah.
And just going through the top of my backlog here, kind of excluding some of the RPGs. God Hand, I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
Rainbow Six Vegas 2. And actually, one of the things I actually have on the shelf next to the TV is Battlefield Bad Company. That was one of the games
Oh.
I intended for that to be like the first game I play on the Xbox Series X, but then I got Elden Ring and kind of like you, it's like, I don't know if this is my cup of tea. And then 180 hours later, it's like, oh, that's definitely my cup of tea.
Yeah. Well, and I think one part of one thing that really resonated with me with Elden Ring is that while it is a Soulsborne game, it is the most um, open Soulsborne game. In previous, like with Demon Souls and Dark Souls and stuff that's Soulsborne. Um, you and I have talked about it where typically with those games you come across something that you can't quite get past and you just have to figure out how to get past it. Um, you and I talked about Stormvale Castle kind of being that more traditional experience of, or the
Yeah,
first,
what they term legacy dungeons.
yeah, as far as like this is the like traditional Soulsborne experience where you don't have grace points at almost every turn, and you really have to go through the entire area, opening up the shortcuts and stuff to get back to the like the grace point, and hope you don't die, hope you don't get offed and then lose all your runes and stuff in the process. So there's I think with Elden Ring, once I remembered, oh yeah, I don't have to try to figure out how to beat this boss right now. I can come back to this boss later when I'm more souped up and I've got the capability of dealing with Margaret instead of constantly beating my head against the wall trying to figure out how to beat Margaret, within the first, like 2 hours of the game.
Yeah. I mean the path leads you right to Margit, and it's like, okay, for me who hasn't played a Soulsborne game before and actually aware of the discourse or surrounding the game, it's like, okay, I know Margit's gonna be a tough battle, but I'm curious. The path led me right to it. Let's see how tough it is. Like, oh,
Yeah.
this would make me want to quit the game if I wasn't
Yeah.
aware that I could go do other
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, and that's really the for me, and just going into Elden Ring is very much like I had played a little bit of Demon Souls. I had played a little bit of like Dark Souls 1 and 2, and they were games that I wanted to get into. I just really struggled to get into them because they are so difficult. And so going into Elden Ring, I was like, I'm probably only going to give this like a couple hours before I'm just like, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want the frustration. But knowing that I did not actually have to go in a specific order of bosses or quests or side quests or whatever. Um, it just 5 hours turned into 10 hours, and 10 hours turned into 20, and 20 turned into 50, and 50 turned into 180. Um, and also getting the platinum trophy. So I took on all of the major bosses that I needed to, and I got the endings that I needed to, and um, but I don't see myself going back and playing other Soulsborne games, because
Yeah, see,
Elden Ring.
I'm definitely much more interested now, but I need a break. I need a long-term
Yeah,
break.
yeah, that's I did not see myself spending 180 hours. I didn't see myself spending more than a couple hours with the game. So the fact that I put in 180 just really surprised me. And like once I beat the Elden Beast, I was like, okay, I am obviously I've got the all the endings so that I could get the platinum trophy. But when I beat the Elden Beast, I was like, I'm done. I'm finally I'm finally free of this game.
I can move on to
That
other stuff now.
Yeah. Of course, then I really like I didn't immediately go into Miles Morales. I did have that moment of like, oh crap, now what do I play? Now that I don't have Elden Ring to just
Well,
consistently
so,
go back to.
I mean, you did because you started thinking about it right
Oh
away.
yeah,
You just said that.
yeah. So it was something where it was just kind of like that brief thing. I was like, oh yeah, Elden Ring is done now. What do I play? And then yeah, I saw Miles Morales and I was like, oh yeah, that's the thing that oh yeah, and then it dawned on me that it had been 6 to 8 months since I beat Spider-Man Remastered, and I was like, oh, I have to now get back into the groove of you know super high acrobatic combat.
You need to
Um,
do what I do. You need to make an actual backlog and say, okay, here are the games I have, or here are the games I want, and here's let me try and order them so I have a guide on what to play next. And
yeah,
then you have stuff to look forward to. It's like I was thinking about, what am I going to play next? Well, before I beat Elden Ring, so it's kind of like, okay, I'm ready to move on. Let me cross all the
yeah.
T's, dot all the I's, and boom, on to the next thing.
Yeah, um, but yeah, that's once I'm done with Miles Morales, I don't really know what I will pick up. I'll probably finish Triangle Strategy since I am pretty close to finishing that. I think I just have like a couple chapters left uh, for that game, and then well, I also need to finish Yakuza Like a Dragon, and I also need to finish God of
Yeah,
War.
you start too many games without finishing them.
Yeah, I definitely need to finish God of War before Ragnarok comes out. Um, now that we have an actual release date for that, um, uh, I've got till November 9th. So we will. I guess we'll see if I actually finish God of War before Ragnarok comes out. Um,
Hmm.
plus, there's Uncharted 4 that I need to finish, and
Yeah,
um,
I tried to get you to. I tried to play that. Tried to force you to play that, and even then you couldn't beat it.
yeah, that's
Wonderful game.
yeah, and um, but I think I'm gonna enjoy Miles Morales while I can. You know, a palate cleanse of it. It is definitely nowhere near as difficult as Elden Ring.
Well,
Um,
changing gears. Did you
of War?
see where Assassin's Creed Liberation was going to be delisted from Steam, but not only delisted from Steam, but Ubisoft was going to make it to where people who had previously purchased it could no longer download it?
Oh, they were gonna try to PT the thing.
Yes. But
Oh,
of
I
course, I
did
mean,
not.
I mean, I mean, with PT, it's like that kind of makes sense because that's a demo for a game that will never come out. Like Konami
Yeah.
is going to be like, yeah, we're not going to keep this up on a store because the end product's never going to come out. But with Ubisoft doing it to like a full game, it's like, that sucks.
Yeah, it's especially for things like because people bought that. They spent
Yeah.
money on that. Um,
Well,
and it's
anyways, seeing that news made me figure out, well, let me see. Am I ever going to play that game? Maybe not. Maybe not.
yeah.
but if I want to, I better go buy it now. And so, Assassin's Creed Liberation, that was originally a spin-off of Assassin's Creed 3.
Yeah.
It was originally released for the Vita, and then I think the following year, an HD remake or reissue was released for the 360, PS3, and eventually that got ported to PS4 and Xbox One. So currently, there are a lot of ways for you to play it digitally, but with Ubisoft making that move on Steam, it would follow suit that they'd make that move everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, I went ahead and the 360 version is backwards compatible on the Xbox. So I went ahead and bought Assassin's Creed: The Americas Collection, which is just a compilation of 3 and 4, and then it has a download code for that Liberation HD. I got that in the mail today, so I'm interested to open that package up and punch that download code in and get it on my system
Yeah.
before Ubisoft says, we're going to take that away. Which, in fairness, because of the public outcry, they did back off and say, okay, we won't do that. But
Well,
that's,
it,
I mean, as we always discuss with like digital games, that's something that is possible and not
yeah.
a doesn't give you the good warm fuzzies that hey, I paid for that. You can't take that away from me. And it's like, well, actually, you didn't pay for the game. You paid for like a one-time license. You don't really own it.
Yeah. Well, and that's I remember with like the PT thing, like Konami was trying to partner with Sony to even for the people who didn't delete the demo from their hard drive on the PS4, like Konami was trying to work with Sony on releasing an update that would just prevent it from being playable. Um, Obviously, I don't know if that still went through or whatever, but essentially, like these companies are starting to,
And I'd be interested if that like there was like verified news sources that that was happening, or if that was just like rumors and
yeah,
scuttlebutt. Like, is that something that like Konami was really asking Sony, hey, make this to where nobody can play it?
yeah. Um, but it's I feel like when Sony was going to shut down the PS3 and PSP and Vita stores, and they were going to do it, and then there was all the backlash about it, and then they were like, oh, okay, well, no, okay, well, we'll keep them open, but and then they start to take features and stuff away, like you just can't use credit cards or debit cards, and well, now you can't use PayPal, and well, now you can't even really put money on the system. I mean, you can if you put it on through like the PS5 or PS4 or
Yeah,
the web store.
which I mean, that all makes
Um,
sense. I mean, that's why they were shutting the store down in the first place. It was just, these are what PS3 came out in 2006, 2007.
yeah,
So these are
2006.
built off 15-year-old, if not older, network architecture. So of course, security, trying to keep that up for the amount
Yeah,
of money they still generate. Like as a business, it makes sense for them to say, hey, we're going to kill this. Not enough of you are using it. But at the same time, I feel like, well, there's again, not knowing the situation, it's much more complicated than this. But so okay, find a way to make those past purchases or those games that are still available for sale on the PS3 or the PlayStation Vita store, make those purchasable on the new PlayStation store. Like,
yeah,
as Asura's Wrath, the only reason you purchased that was that's an Xbox 360 game. It came out in 2012. It's 10 years old now. The only reason you purchased it is because Microsoft has made it so there are at least some backwards compatible titles still available for purchase. It'd be great if there
yeah,
were more. There's not going to be any more, but it'd be great if there was a greater purpose and greater net to go catch all those. But the only reason you have it is because Microsoft has made it so Capcom can still sell it, and with those old games, hey, since we're still selling them, we'll put them on sale. I mean,
yeah,
technically, you could buy Asura's Wrath on the PlayStation 3 and all the DLC, of which there is quite a bit of, but it's expensive. So at least with it
yeah,
still being available on like Xbox and maybe on Steam, it's the same. I don't know. Well, I don't know that Asura's Wrath ever came to Steam, but at least on Xbox, hey, Capcom routinely puts that stuff like 75, 80% off. Like you can get all of Asura's Wrath for like $8.
yeah. Well, and we've had these
And
conversations before
and
with
they're still generating $8 off this 10-year-old game.
yeah, a game that for you know I would imagine all intents and purposes, like Capcom, they've made their money off of Asura's Wrath. Um, Putting it on sale 10 years down the line just to eke out a little bit more money out of it, um, can, in my book, should be viewed as a win-win. Like, somebody gets to play this game, they get to support the company that made it happen, and Capcom makes a little bit of money off of it. Just like it's not like these companies or these games are breaking these companies. Like, the game's been available for 10 years. You put it up on sale, a few more people buy it. That's a few extra dollars that are going to the company, which, granted, it's just a few extra dollars.
Yeah, it's
But
not going to it's not something where they're like, hey, this is going to be our primary motivator for making
yeah,
an Asura's Wrath 2. We finally decided we're going to do it. But at the same time, like you're saying, it's, hey, you guys have already made all the money you expected to make off this, so this is just some extra dough. Not a lot, but hey.
yeah. Like, this is something that it's not a remaster, it's not a port. They're not remaking it. They're just saying, hey, we're putting this game that was already made, already published, everything about it is already done. We are just putting it on sale and getting a couple extra dollars out of it. We're not having to really put any extra work into it. We're just saying, hey, instead of spending $20 on it, you can buy it for 10 or, 5 if you're lucky. And hey, we're going to put all the DLC on sale so you can get the actual ending of the game. Uh, so yeah, like it just, I feel like, Ubisoft making that announcement and then backtracking on that announcement of, the Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation thing. I feel like that's just, at this point, I feel like it's just kind of, these companies are looking for ways to stir the pot a little bit and then get some goodwill by being like, oh well, we listened, we were
No. I mean,
like,
at the end of the day, they're all companies. At
yeah,
some point, they're going to look at a graph or a P&L that says, hey, it cost us more money to host this or to pay licensing fees than it did than the money it made. Like, we need to
yeah,
do away with it now. And I don't know what the reasoning was for Assassin's Creed Liberation. I think maybe something like with Sega and the old Sonic Genesis games was
just a
where they're
licensing
putting out
thing.
a well, no, that they're putting out a new compilation or they're doing a new
Oh,
remaster of it. So they're taking the old version offline, with whenever that Sonic Origins collection just came out. Sega, and to their benefit, they announced ahead of time, but they took down some older, like Xbox 360, Xbox Live Arcade, and PS3 era digital ports of those games. So now,
yeah,
instead of saying, well, if you want to play Sonic the Hedgehog 2, you can still go buy like the old, 2008 digital port. It's like, no, they're going to take that down. So then the only way you can buy it is either through a compilation or buy the new Sonic Origins collection.
yeah,
Which again, credit to them, they announced it ahead of time. But, and I think, again, I don't know the reason why Ubisoft is taking down Assassin's Creed Liberation, but I think the thing that sucks in that case was where they were actually saying, "Hey, we're also not going to let you re-download it." Like
yeah,
that is the bridge too far.
yeah. Because, like, I mean, nobody looks at the in license user agreement, but at the same point, like, everybody's going into like buying these games or these services or whatever with the intent that there's going to be that support there, and that whenever they want to download their purchase again, they'll be able to. And that was one of the big things, like the uh, you know, for the most part, like when the PlayStation Store, when Sony was going to shutter uh, 3 systems worth of stores, um, just all of the games that would forever be locked in a dead store.
Yeah,
And
or only accessible through, piracy or, emulation through, non-sanctioned means, which
yeah,
that's fine, hey, hey, Sony and other third-party people, I guess, are not third-party publishers are not interested in making sure these games are still available to be purchased legally. Okay, I'm gonna still play the
Yeah.
games. I'll just find another way. Someone
Yeah.
has done the work to archive them.
And then that spans into a whole other conversation of the game preservation and just what these companies are doing to either
Yeah, I mean,
help preserve or in some cases run the risk of just you know killing off like you and I talked about
you
in
can't rely on the companies and the corporations to uh, do the work on preservation.
yeah
It's not in their interest. It's their companies. Their goal is to enhance shareholder value to make money for their shareholders, and that's not
yeah
necessarily always going to line up with game preservation. It's again,
yeah that's
I don't place the blame with them because it's not really their prerogative. It doesn't line up with it, but I really
but
feel like they should.
yeah
But
because
someone's going to do it.
they've got the resources to do it. They've got the original code. They've got all the they have the master copies of these games. You and I talked about, there was a point in time with Square Enix, you know, at one point Squaresoft, where they were like, "Hey, we shipped this game. We're done with this game. Delete. On to the next one." And now it's like, "Oh, we could have still made money off of that stuff." And now we have to like reverse engineer various other versions of these games to make these remasters and ports and remakes and stuff so that we can make money off of the stuff that we did in the 90s. And um, so I would like to see. I mean, it's a big wish, and for the most part, there's a lot of credit to Microsoft for being able to do what they have done with backwards compatibility across multiple generations of Xbox hardware.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I'd love for it to be 100% backwards compatibility,
yeah,
but I guess we can't really do that anymore with the way like game contracts are written.
yeah,
They've in their backwards compatibility efforts for the Xbox One going forward, it's basically, hey, we have like they went to like every publisher and said, hey, can any of these games be made backwards compatible? We've done the work to get the games running, so now it's just on you. Like, do you have the license and everything to continue selling this game? And
yeah.
for a lot of games, it's just, hey, we do not.
Um, so yeah,
And again, and yeah,
I would hope to see more effort, you know, towards
and I
preserving.
guess yeah, and I guess think about it. Let me correct myself. It's maybe not always on the publisher either. It's again, kind of goes back to the way contracts are made up, and I think the way the games are sold. So if I'm buying a digital copy of a game, that is essentially a game. You know, the publishers are only licensing the ability to sell these games, or in the case that have like licensed soundtracks or whatnot, you're only this license is good for 5 years,
Yeah,
even though it's an old game. That's there's a new sale of it. I guess that would count as a new sale or something. I don't know.
yeah,
I know there are like contractual reasons and other reasons why we don't see full backwards compatibility the way we did back, you know, PS1 to PS2 era.
yeah.
The way the games were handled were different. The way the contracts were written were different.
It all comes down to the bottom line, and if there's enough money to be made, then the companies will, support it. Um, if there's not, then they're going to find ways to drop the guillotine on it.
Yeah.
Um, but I,
Well, is that about it?
yeah, I think that's probably a good stopping point for this first run of ultimately whatever this gets called. Um, but that's hopefully we can do this on like a weekly basis and do more of them in person and be able to dive into all these games because between both of us we have so many games to play and talk about. And like I said, well, pretty much what we talked about at the beginning of all this is just being able to have this archive of just what we're talking about, whether it's new releases, old releases, just the games that we're playing. Like I'm looking forward to being able to have these conversations whenever you do get around to playing Suikoden 5, which hopefully is somewhere on the horizon for you. Like I don't know if
Yeah, I mean, I think the next lengthy game, the next RPG I'd like to play would be Suikoden Tactics, but I don't know how that will fall with like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 releasing. I don't
oh
think I'm
yeah.
going to play that anytime soon, but I would want to play Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And then, of course, with Star Ocean releasing after that.
God,
And
yeah.
again, I think we'll play that probably simultaneously, so I'll probably will
Yeah.
skip playing Star Ocean 4 and 5. But then even after that, then there's the new Pokemon game. So
Yeah.
Suikoden Tactics is next up on my list, but don't know where the cards will land, how that'll play out.
All right. Well, that's got quite a few games coming, and as is very prevalent on the other show, Gamer Vision, with Tony from Procedurally Generated. Um, we have talked about like 2022 very much feels like multiple years in one as far as game releases go, because the first half of the year, like there's Horizon Forbidden West, and there was the Sifu game, and then there was, they're obviously kicking things off with Pokemon Legends Arceus and Triangle Strategy and Elden Ring and Gran Turismo 7, and like
I mean, it's
within,
COVID. Basically, all
yeah,
those COVID delays from 2020, 2021 that were hindering development, slowing the development of these games, they finally kind of got through that, figured out how to work remotely, get it all
yeah,
knocked out, and now we're seeing the fruits of their labor. Lots of games coming out.
yeah, and we're just over halfway through, and there's yeah, it's still Xenoblade Chronicles 3. There's I think Bayonetta 3 is coming out this year. I think there's
Yeah,
Splatoon 3.
Bayonetta 3 got a date. Bayonetta 3 got a collector's edition coming out. It's
Uh,
actually happening.
There's Valkyrie Elysium and Star Ocean, The Divine Force, and God of War Ragnarok, the new Pokemon games. Like 2022 is halfway over, and there's still pretty much an entire year's worth of big, middle tier, like mid tier to AAA titles still to come. Like this is just an incredible year for gaming. I'm very curious how 2023 is going to hold up, because if 2022 is like this, there's got to be some relenting on big game releases. But Microsoft has a lot of things that are in
Yeah,
the
that may be the
pipeline.
first year that we start seeing a big influx of Microsoft titles.
Yeah, Starfield is allegedly first half of next year.
Okay, well, this was
Yeah.
John.
And Jeff, and uh, John's from My Brain on Games, and I'm from, well, here, just one more level. And we'll be back with another podcast talking about the games that we're playing, the trophies and achievements that we're getting, and we'll see you in, or I guess you'll hear us in the next episode of whatever this gets called. See ya.
Bye bye.